So we decided before we ever got married that we would never live in a house that was an all brick front or that had a garage. All brick front meaning there was vinyl on 3 sides.
Hi, I'm Andrew Moody.
And I'm Kim Moody.
We never wanted to live in something that was just a facade.
So we live in a McMansion in the middle of town.
And we never wanted to live in a house with a garage that we would drive into, the door would close, and we'd go in through the garage and never see or talk to our neighbors. So
these are just a few of the things that we try to do to live more sustainably in a McMansion urban environment.
We are the most uncomfortable housing-wise that we've ever been.
There are probably 2 things that stand out to you as odd in these last statements. One might be why Kim and her husband Andrew are living in the very same house they pledged to avoid, and the second would be why 2 highly educated and professionally successful members of a first world country would express discomfort regarding their large, new house.
It's our home, and it's very homey inside, but on the outside it's part of that same facade of what is the American dream, and it's so fake.
They bought the house inexpensively, as a foreclosure, and are bound to their current location for a time, intending eventually to buy a much smaller home and to share housing responsibilities with others. But even during this time, trapped in a McMansion, they've begun to change how they live day to day.
We realize that we're in this house for, a couple years, and we want to try and make the best of it. So we try to implement the little strategies that we can do to make things work in a sustainable way, in ways that don't conflict with the HOA rules, the homeowners association. So the rain barrels have to be in the back so nobody can see them.
You may hear things from Kim that seem contradictory, like the house, but that is because they're a couple in transition. In Kim's own words, they feel as though they have their hands in both pots, having come from backgrounds of privilege, yet realizing its fragility, and now they're exploring newer, simpler ways of living. But it's a long transformation.
We're making an intentional choice not to live the way that we grew up, knowing that it was first class to live. That we don't need to shop at Macy's to be happy. Our peers from school are living in metropolitan areas, and they're working and they're existing in that 9 to 5 and really struggling in DC and Richmond and some of these more expensive places, and they're feeling more defined by the type of shoes that they own or the cars they drive. And all that isn't going to matter. In 5 years, you're not going to remember that shirt that you're still paying for, on your credit card. All these materialistic things aren't going to provide you with what you need here, and certainly not what you need here, but how we can figure out, to re-educate people in existing on much less in a simpler lifestyle. If we can sort of redefine what normal is, then that can be really important.
So what are they doing now to bridge the gap between their McMansion and future dreams of agrarian co-housing?
So we grow our own vegetables in the summer. We try and support the farmers markets, anytime that we can versus buying it at a big box grocery store, of course. We haven't purchased vegetables from the store other than an occasional can of peas or heads of garlic or onions for probably 4 or 5 years.
We actually started gathering nuts, and we're going to shell those so that we have them in the winter, and we're not spending a lot of money on those. And we don't have nut trees on our property, so we actually just put an ad on Free Cycle saying, hey, we're looking for nuts. If anybody's not going to be using them this year, we'll be glad to come pick them up. And we got a few emails, and we've been around our little local area here and gathered 5 or 6 5-gallon buckets full.
We're learning to do all the preservation techniques, the freezing, canning, and drying and all that, which has been a really big eye-opener. Just learning to do smaller things, buying in bulk so that we're saving on the packaging, or choosing not to purchase things that we don't absolutely need. Grouping our trips together to town because we're away from grocery stores and things like that. Try to make our own cleaning supplies.
We fill up 2-liter bottles, old 2 liters with water, and put them in the back of our commodes, so then when the commode flushes, it doesn't use those 2 liters.
Clothesline in the basement instead of drying things in the dryer.
We also have rain barrels that Kim and I built together. We use enough water out of them, they stay so full.
One of the big debates around our house has been with the grass and like living in a HOA community and having to keep the grass manicured and all those things. We read that you actually do as much damage in a growing season in the summer by fertilizing your lawn and cutting the grass as you do an entire year in a car for an average family of 4 people. So that was really eye-opening for us. So it's been simple things like deciding, okay, well, we have to keep the front yard perfect, but maybe we can only cut the backyard every 3rd time. Doing some community meals with some friends of ours, so instead of everybody turning on their stove at 6 o'clock to make dinner, you know, just deciding that once a week we were going to have a meal together with friends of ours where they would each bring certain things to contribute, but we're going to cook it at the same place. You know, just little things like that that don't cause a major shift, but can make a lot of change. But just being able to do a lot of that, like in our farm, in our yard, and to be able to sort of educate other people in ways that normal people can live in a more sustainable way. We're working on founding this new school, and it's bringing people in from the outside world and sort of educating them in how this could look and what's realistic, that focuses on localized living and sustainable agriculture and sustainable architecture and how design and some of these lost arts can really impact people's lives. The first time I think I really realized it was we'd been married for a couple years, and I was calling my grandmother for recipes all the time, and she had taken a pretty major downturn in health, and I kept realizing that all these things that I needed to know were inside her mind, which weren't really as accessible as they had been 10 years ago. And my mom didn't have those answers and didn't have the recipes or didn't have the skills. And so it was realizing that there's been like a very intentional break in that pattern of passing things down. And sort of the wanting to reconnect with what that was about was a big thing for us. And knowing that all of our friends were buying their vegetables at the grocery store in cans, and we were still going home to pick up that stuff from our grandparents' house where they home canned everything, and how much healthier our family was, you know, and there hasn't been a string of cancer and any of these illnesses the way I look at the rest of my friends who have for generations been buying at grocery stores. My parents and my husband's parents don't really know how to do all the things that our grandparents do. And our grandparents are of the age now where they're a little too old to teach us. So we're really afraid and fearful that all those arts that they practiced as what was just normal living and existing in them are being lost. The myth is that you just wake up one day or you go to school and you learn all these things and it's this transformation and all of a sudden you can start implementing. But really it's so much more organic, and you learn as you go, and you mess up a lot. I realize how much of a desire a lot of people have for this, and they just don't know what to do with it. It's really interesting to have people that, you know, are kind of going through the same thing in their own way, in their own community, and realizing that we can all impact each other.